That morning, I opened my banking app the way I always did. I waited for the number that appeared every month, but the screen stayed unchanged. I refreshed the page again and again. Not because I expected a miracle, but because my mind wasn't ready to accept that nothing had arrived this month. The house looked exactly the same. Sunlight still reached the kitchen window, Mira laughed in the living room, and Armand smiled before leaving for work. Nothing around us seemed different. Yet, from that morning on, every small decision about money suddenly felt much heavier than before. My name is Clara. The month when we had no income at all quietly taught me something I had never learned while our bank account still felt secure. I started the morning the way I always did, making breakfast for Armand and Mira, but before opening the refrigerator, I reached for the budget notebook waiting on the dining table. I counted the eggs, the rice, and the vegetables that were left. Somehow, each ingredient felt more valuable than it had only a month ago. When I opened the payment app, several bills were getting close to their due dates. I quietly took a slow breath while adding up the money we still had. Throughout the day, I found myself turning off lights that no one was using. Even switching on the water dispenser or the air conditioner became something I paused to consider. That afternoon, Mira asked for her favorite snack as we walked past a convenience store. I smiled and told her there was still something good waiting at home. She nodded without asking anything else. On the way home, I kept thinking about how easy it was to say later when I was really trying to protect our budget. That night, I closed the budget notebook after checking every number one more time. For the first time, it felt like every bill we spent needed a real reason to leave our hands. The days that followed seemed to move much more slowly. I noticed that even the smallest expense now stayed in my mind longer before I could agree to it. While writing our weekly shopping list, I crossed out a few things that always used to stay on it. They were still useful, but this month we had to choose only what we truly needed. I opened each kitchen cabinet one by one. There was still rice, pasta, a few cans, and spices that had quietly been sitting on the shelves all along. That day, I decided not to go shopping after all. Instead, I planned our meals around what was already in the kitchen, not around what we felt like eating. That evening, I looked back at last month's spending notes. Small expenses that once seemed ordinary suddenly looked much larger than I remembered. I quietly told myself, it's only 1 month. Once everything returns to normal, life will feel normal again. But the longer I looked at those numbers, the harder it became to ignore one question. Had we been spending money more often than we ever realized? I began marking every expense that truly could not be postponed. Slowly, 4 essential categories took shape across the pages of our household budget notebook: housing, food, transportation, utilities. I realized that almost everything beyond those 4 could wait. It did not make those things unimportant, only less urgent for where we were right now. Whenever I wanted to buy something, I paused before reaching for my wallet. Quietly, I asked myself whether it protected one of our family's 4 essential needs. If the answer was no, I closed the shopping list again. Somehow, that small decision made my thoughts feel a little calmer. Even so, the worry had not disappeared. I still woke in the middle of the night, quietly calculating how long our emergency savings could carry us if nothing changed. I still could not say that we were doing fine. But for the first time since that month began, it felt like we were no longer moving without direction, and we finally had a way to face the uncertain days ahead. Even so, the worry had not disappeared. I still woke in the middle of the night, quietly calculating how long our emergency savings could carry us if nothing changed. I still could not say that we were doing fine. But for the first time since that month began, it felt like we were no longer moving without direction, and we finally had a way to face the uncertain days ahead. Outside our home, life still looked much the same. The neighbors waved, Mira left for school with a smile, and Armand headed out again to look for new opportunities. I tried to keep our home feeling warm every day. I didn't want Mira to carry the quiet worry that stayed with me. While making dinner, I started finding new ways to use what was already in the kitchen. Somehow, those simple meals brought us together at the table more often. But each time I saw the refrigerator becoming emptier, my chest tightened again. Quietly, I counted how many more days those supplies might last. I found myself saying, "Let's use what we already have first." Those words became more than a way to save money. They quietly reminded me that this season was different. Every night, I kept smiling in front of Arman and Mira. After they fell asleep, I opened the budget notebook and quietly added everything up again. I realized the hardest part wasn't having no income. It was trying to stay calm while my mind never truly stopped counting. One afternoon after school, Mira quietly opened the freezer, hoping to find her favorite ice cream. She looked back at me with a small, curious expression. "Mom, are we out of ice cream?" she asked softly. I smiled and nodded, even though I had already rehearsed several answers in my mind. Before I could explain anything, Mira gently closed the freezer. "That's okay, Mom. Cold water tastes good too." She sat beside me with a glass of cold water in her hands. "The important thing is we'll have dinner together later, right?" I looked at her for a long moment. To her, being together mattered much more than the snack that had been making me feel guilty all afternoon. In that quiet moment, I realized something I had been missing. The greatest fear had never come from Mira, but from my own belief that I always had to provide everything. That night, I closed my budget notebook a little earlier than usual. For the first time that month, I quietly felt that maybe our family was not as lacking as I had feared. After Mira fell asleep that night, I opened the budget notebook again at the kitchen table. This time, my eyes lingered less on the numbers and more on everything we had lived through over the past few weeks. I realized that the fear I had been carrying was not only about money. Part of me was afraid of falling short as a mother when my family needed me most. Yet throughout the month, Mira never complained about the things we chose not to buy. She seemed happiest during the simple moments we spent cooking, eating, and being together at home. A thought slowly became clearer beneath all the worry. Children often remember how loved they felt, not how much was bought for them. I looked again at the 4 priorities written on the first page of the notebook. Housing, food, transportation, and utilities were still covered because of the emergency fund we had built before this difficult month arrived. That was when the meaning of a financial safety net felt more real to me. The emergency fund had protected more than our account balance. It had given us room to stay calm and think clearly. I finally understood that our sense of calm had not come from how much money we had. It came from already knowing what mattered most for our family and protecting those things together. The following evening, after the house became quiet again, I sat with Arman at the dining table. 2 warm cups of tea and our budget notebook, now covered with handwritten notes, rested between us. I quietly admitted that I'd been more afraid of things that had not happened yet than of the situation we were actually living through. Saying it out loud helped me recognize what had been weighing on my mind. Arman slowly nodded before telling me he was afraid too. He said he was grateful we could still talk through everything without blaming each other. I opened the page showing our family's 4 priorities and slid it toward him. As long as those 4 things were secure, I felt we still had somewhere to stand. Arman reached across the table and held my hand. He reminded me that even though the income had stopped for now, we should not stop trusting each other. His words eased the weight I had been carrying inside. I realized that what I needed most was someone willing to keep walking beside me while nothing was certain yet. Together, we closed the budget notebook for the night. Our problems were not over, but we both knew we were no longer facing them alone. So by the end of the month, we had finally made it through. There was still no new income, but we had managed without debt and without giving up the things our family truly needed. I opened the budget notebook again and looked through every page. Instead of fear, I saw the trail of small decisions that had helped us keep going. Even as things slowly started to improve, we did not rush back to our old habits. We quietly kept some of the simple routines that had made everyday life feel lighter. Now, before buying anything, we always talked about it first. It was not because we were afraid to spend money, but because we wanted every choice to match what mattered most to our family. Myra had also grown used to seeing us cook together at home. She often said homemade dinners had become her favorite part of the day. I smiled every time I heard her say that. The hardest month we had faced had also become the month we spent together the most, without rushing through our days. We had gone 1 full month without any income. Yet somehow, we came away with something far more valuable: the quiet confidence that our family could face difficult seasons together. Today, our bank account has money in it again. Even so, the memory of that month without any income is still quietly with us. I still use the financial safety net protocol whenever I plan our family budget. I know that peace comes from knowing what needs to be prioritized when life changes. I learned that a financial crisis does not always break a family apart. Sometimes it becomes the place where we listen to one another, support each other, and remember how valuable togetherness is. If our story has stayed with you through a difficult season, I would be happy to welcome you into our little family at Clara's Family Journal. Here, we learn together about family finances, healthy relationships, and living a calmer life, one story at a time. I would love to hear your story. Have you ever gone through a month with very little income or none at all? And what was the biggest lesson you took from that time? Please share it in the comments, because your experience might give hope to another family still finding their way.